Failure has this funny way of making us feel like we've hit a dead end. Like it's the universe's way of saying, hey, you're not good enough. But what if I told you that failure is the end of the road? What if I told you it's actually one of the best teachers you'll ever have? Sounds crazy, right? But stick with me, because this could change the way you see every setback in your life. Let's start with this. Failure isn't the opposite of success. It's part of it. Think about it. Every time you fail, you're forced to stop and ask yourself, what went wrong? And that question, that's where the magic happens. It's like failure hands you a mirror and says, here, take a good look. What can you learn from this? And when you take that mirror, you start seeing things you never noticed before. Maybe you weren't prepared enough. Maybe you took a shortcut. Or maybe, just maybe, you were chasing the wrong goal altogether. Failure doesn't just show you your mistakes, it shows you the path to fixing them. But here's the thing, failure only works as a teacher if you let it. You've got to be willing to listen. You've got to be willing to say, okay, I messed up, now what can I do differently? And that's not easy. It takes guts to admit you were wrong. It takes courage to face your flaws. When you do, something incredible happens. You stop seeing failure as this big, scary monster. Instead, you start seeing it as a guide. A tough love coach who's pushing you to be better. Now, let's talk about action. Because learning from failure isn't just about thinking, it's about doing. Let's say you tried something and it didn't work out. The worst thing you can do is sit there and beat yourself up about it. The best thing you can do, get up, dust yourself off, and try again. But this time, try smarter. Use what you learned from your last attempt. Tweak your approach. Adjust your mindset. And keep moving forward. Remember, every time you fail, you're one step closer to getting it right. And here's a little secret. The most successful people in the world didn't get where they are by avoiding failure. They got there by embracing it. They failed over and over and over again. But they didn't let those failures define them. Instead, they used them as stepping stones. They asked themselves, what can I learn from this? And then they applied those lessons. That's how you turn failure into fuel. That's how you make it work for you, not against you. So the next time you fail, and trust me, you will not run from it. Don't hide from it. Face it head on. Ask yourself the hard questions. Learn the lessons. And then take what you've learned and use it to move forward. Because here's the truth, failure isn't your enemy. It's your teacher. And if you're willing to listen, it'll teach you everything you need to know about success. Now, let's dig a little deeper. Why does failure hurt so much? Why does it feel like a punch to the gut every single time? Well, it's because failure challenges our ego. It makes us question our abilities, our worth, and even our identity. But here's the thing, that discomfort. That's where growth happens. When you're forced to confront your weaknesses, you have two choices. You can either let them define you, or you can use them to refine you. And guess what? The second option is where the magic happens. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're working on a project and it completely flops. Your first reaction might be to feel embarrassed, maybe even ashamed. But instead of dwelling on those feelings, what if you asked yourself, what did I miss? What could I have done differently? Suddenly, that failure becomes a treasure trove of insights. It's no longer a dead end, it's a detour that's leading you to a better path. And here's another thing, failure teaches you resilience. It's like a muscle that gets stronger every time you use it. The more you fail, the more you learn how to bounce back. And over time, you start to realize that failure isn't the end of the world. It's just a temporary setback, a bump in the road. And the more you experience it, the less power it has over you. You start to see it for what it really is, a stepping stone, not a stumbling block. But let's be real, failure isn't just about learning and growing. It's also about perspective. Think about it. When you're in the middle of a failure, it feels huge. It feels like the world is ending. But when you look back on it months or even years later, you realize it was that big of a deal. In fact, you might even laugh about it. That's because time gives you perspective. It helps you see that failure is permanent. It's just a moment in time. And once you realize that, it becomes a lot easier to move on. Now let's talk about fear. Because let's be honest, a lot of us avoid failure because we're afraid of it. We're afraid of looking stupid, of being judged, of not being good enough. But here's the thing, fear is just a feeling. It's not a fact. And the more you face it, the smaller it gets. So instead of letting fear hold you back, use it as motivation. Let it push you to try harder, to do better, to keep going even when things get tough. Because the only way to truly fail is to give up. And speaking of giving up, let's talk about persistence. Because learning from failure isn't a one-time thing. It's a process. It's about trying, failing, learning, and trying again. And again. And again. It's about not letting setbacks stop you from reaching your goals. It's about keeping your eyes on the prize even when the road gets rocky. Because here's the truth, success isn't about never failing. It's about never quitting. Now let's get practical. How can you actually make failure your best teacher? Here's a simple strategy. First, when you fail, take a step back. Don't react right away. Give yourself some time to process what happened. Then ask yourself these 3 questions. What went wrong? What did I learn? And what can I do differently next time? These questions will help you turn your failure into a learning experience. They'll help you see the lessons in the mess. And here's another tip, don't go it alone. Talk to someone you trust. Share your experience. Ask for advice. Sometimes an outside perspective can help you see things you might have missed. Plus, it's a great way to remind yourself that you're not alone. Everyone fails. Everyone struggles. And everyone has the potential to learn and grow from it. Finally, remember to be kind to yourself. Failure does mean you're a failure. It just means you're human. And being human means making mistakes. It means falling down and getting back up. It means learning, growing, and becoming better. So the next time you fail, don't beat yourself up. Instead, give yourself some grace. Remind yourself that failure is just part of the process. And then get back to work. Because here's the thing, failure isn't the end of the story. It's just the beginning. It's the first step on the path to success. And if you're willing to learn from it, if you're willing to keep going, there's no limit to what you can achieve. So embrace your failures. Learn from them. And let them guide you to greatness. Let's talk about something we don't often consider. Failure isn't just about what happens to you, it's about how you respond to it. Think of it like this, life throws you a curveball. You can either duck and let it pass, or you can step up and swing. Sure, you might miss. But what if you hit it? What if that failure becomes the moment you discover a strength you never knew you had? That's the power of perspective. It's not about the failure itself, it's about what you do with it. Here's something else to think about. Failure often reveals your true priorities. When something does work out, it forces you to ask, is this really what I want? And sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes failure is life's way of redirecting you. It's like a GUPS recalculating your route. Sure, it might feel frustrating in the moment, but it's often leading you to a better destination. So don't fight the detour. Trust the process. Now let's talk about habits. Because how you handle failure often comes down to the habits you've built. Do you give up at the first sign of trouble? Or do you dig in and keep going? The truth is, resilience is a habit. Learning from failure is a habit. And like any habit, it takes practice. The more you do it, the easier it gets. So start small. The next time something doesn't go your way, take a deep breath and ask yourself, what's the lesson here? Over time, this will become second nature. And here's a thought, failure is often a sign that you're pushing your limits. If you're not failing, you're probably not trying hard enough. Think about it. When was the last time you failed? If it's been a while, maybe it's time to take a bigger risk. Maybe it's time to step out of your comfort zone and try something new. Because here's the thing, growth doesn't happen in the safe zone. It happens when you're willing to take a chance, even if it means falling flat on your face. Let's also talk about comparison. Because one of the biggest traps we fall into is comparing our failures to someone else's success. We see someone who's made it big and we think, why can't I do that? But here's the truth, you're only seeing their highlight reel. You're not seeing the countless times they failed behind the scenes. So stop comparing your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20. Your journey is your own. And every failure is just part of your story. Here's another way to look at it. Failure is feedback. It's not a judgment, it's information. When something doesn't work out, it's not saying you're bad at this. It's saying here's what you need to improve. And that's a gift. Because once you know what needs work, you can focus your energy on getting better. It's like having a roadmap to success. Sure, the road might be bumpy, but at least you know where you're going. Now let's talk about mindset. Because how you think about failure makes all the difference. If you see it as a dead end, you'll stay stuck. But if you see it as a stepping stone, you'll keep moving forward. It's all about shifting your perspective. Instead of asking, why did this happen to me, ask, what can I learn from this? A simple shift can change everything. It turns failure from a roadblock into a launch pad. And here's something we don't talk about enough. Failure builds character. It teaches you humility. It teaches you patience. It teaches you grit. These are qualities you can't learn from success. They only come from struggle. So the next time you fail, remind yourself, this is making me stronger. This is shaping me into the person I'm meant to be. And that's a powerful thought. Let's also remember that failure is universal. No one is immune to it. Not the richest person in the world. Not the most successful entrepreneur. Not even the most talented artist. Everyone fails. The difference is, some people let it stop them, while others use it to propel them forward. Which one do you want to be? The choice is yours. But remember, every failure is an opportunity. An opportunity to learn, to grow, and to become better than you were before. Finally, let's talk about the big picture. Because when you look back on your life, it's not the failures you'll remember. It's what you did with them. It's the lessons you learned, the strength you gained, and the person you became. So don't be afraid to fail. Be afraid of never trying. Be afraid of letting fear hold you back. Because in the end, the only real failure is not learning from your mistakes. Everything else is just part of the journey. Let's talk about something we often overlook. Failure isn't just about you. It's about the people around you too. When you fail, it's an opportunity to show others how to handle setbacks with grace. Think about it. Your reaction to failure can inspire someone else to keep going. It can show them that it's okay to stumble as long as you get back up. So don't just fail for yourself, fail for the people who are watching and learning from you. Here's another way to look at it. Failure is a test of your commitment. It's easy to stay motivated when everything's going well. But when things fall apart, that's when you find out how badly you really want something. Are you willing to keep going even when it's hard? Are you willing to put in the work even when there's no guarantee of success? If the answer is yes, then failure is the roadblock, it's a checkpoint. It's reminding you why you started in the first place. Now let's talk about creativity. Because failure often forces you to think outside the box. When plan A does work, you are forced to come up with plan B, K, or even D, and sometimes those backup plans turn out to be better than the original. Failure pushes you to innovate. It pushes you to explore new ideas and approaches. So the next time you fail, don't see it as a dead end. See it as a chance to get creative. And here's something to consider. Failure teaches you patience. In a world where we want everything right now, failure reminds us that good things take time. It's like planting a seed. You can't rush it to grow. You have to water it, give it sunlight, and wait. Failure is the same way. It's teaching you to trust the process, even when you can't see the results yet. So, don't get discouraged if things don't happen overnight. Keep going. The seeds you're planting today will grow into something amazing tomorrow. Let's also talk about fear of judgment. Because a lot of us avoid failure because we're worried about what other people will think. But here's the truth. Most people are too busy worrying about themselves to judge you. And even if they do, so what? Their opinion does define you. What defines you is how you respond to failure. You let it shut you down. Or do you use it as fuel to keep going? The choice is yours. But remember, you are not here to live someone else's version of success. You're here to create your own. Here's another thought. Failure is a great equalizer. It doesn't care who you are, where you come from, or what you've achieved. It can happen to anyone at any time. And that's actually a good thing. Because it means we're all in this together. We're all learning, growing, and figuring things out as we go. So the next time you fail, remember you're not alone. Everyone around you is fighting their own battles, too. Now, let's talk about the role of failure in building confidence. It might sound counterintuitive, but failing can actually make you more confident. How? Because every time you fail and bounce back, you prove to yourself that you're stronger than you think. You realize that failure isn't the end of the world. It's just a temporary setback. And the more you experience that, the more confident you become in your ability to handle whatever life throws at you. And here's something we don't talk about enough. Failure can be a source of humor. Yes, humor. Think about it. Some of the best stories come from our biggest failures. The time you tripped in front of everyone. The time you completely bombed a presentation. Those moments might have been embarrassing at the time, but later they become stories you laugh about. So don't take failure too seriously. Learn to laugh at yourself. It makes the journey a lot more fun. Let's also remember that failure is a sign of effort. If you're failing, it means you're trying. And trying is what matters. Because the only way to truly fail is to never try at all. So, give yourself credit for showing up, for putting yourself out there, for taking the risk. Even if it does work out, you're still ahead of everyone who stayed on the sidelines. And that's something to be proud of. Finally, let's talk about the ripple effect of failure. Because when you learn from your failures, you don't just help yourself, you help others too. Your experiences can guide someone else who's going through the same thing. Your lessons can inspire someone to keep going. Your story can remind someone that they're not alone. So don't just fail for yourself. Fail for the people who will one day look to you for hope. Failure is the end, it's the beginning of something greater. It's not about how many times you fall, it's about how many times you get back up. Every failure is a lesson, every setback is set up for a comeback. So, embrace your failures, learn from them, and let them guide you to success. Remember, the only true failure is giving up. Keep going, keep growing, and let failure be your greatest teacher.